Hello, hi everyone, hi again. I'm Andrea Stern. This is Navigating the Unknown, so welcome back. I'm Andrea Stern of SternRep and AskSternRep, and I'm so happy to be partnering with APA LA to do this with you because I really believe in this group. It means a lot to me, and it always has. It's a group that is for photographers. It was created by photographers, and especially all the community support and resources. That's what we need right now. So I'm going to introduce Hugh. Let's see. Okay. This week, our co-host, LA photographer and APA LA board member, Hugh Kretschmer. Hi, Hugh.
Hi. Hi, Andrea.
And guests, senior art producer, Clarissa Garrett from 72 and Sunny.
Hi.
And senior art producer, Sandra Sanchez from FCB Chicago, joining us.
Hello.
Let me turn to Hugh first. Hello, Hugh.
Hi, Andrea. It's great to be partnering with you and these webinars, especially being big fans of AskSternReps as we build our community in this industry together. I've been a board member for about 2.5 years, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this particular series because we are about advocating for our photographers and bringing them information. So I'm really grateful for you guys donating your time to this cause. So thank you very much. Andrea, now it's on to you.
All right. So, you know, we have a lot going on in the world right now, and we did postpone last week. As you all understand, we couldn't talk about business last week. So we are going to talk about business this week. Let me get to my script. Hold on. So my goal since I started this, or we started this, was to talk to busy art producers. It's been difficult to get busy art producers because they're so busy. So we are so excited to have these two here with us today. And this really is going to be an hour because they got to go back to work. They're busy shooting this. Let's see. I've been so frightened they'd each cancel. Every time I'd hear from either of them, I'd be like, are you canceling? Oh God. But they're here. So let's see. If you have, at the end, we will do a check-in to see if you two have any of your own final comments and words of wisdom for all of us. This is seriously such a blessing to get to hear two perspectives of the busiest art producers, Clarissa Garrett and Sandra Sanchez. Clarissa started her path at Team One Advertising, producing beautiful content for Lexus. After some time freelancing, she landed at Media Arts Lab on Apple in an intensely creative agency. She helped launch the iPad and was one of the senior producers for the award-winning Shot on iPhone World Gallery campaign. After that, she spent a few years producing great work for Honda, where she met Sandra. Clarissa is now at 72 and Sunny, making great work for Google. In her free time, she can be found with her two beautiful children or singing jazz soul in the LA area. Sandra is an integrated producer at FCB Chicago, specializing in photography, stills, art, but learning more and more about motion and broadcast with each passing production. She loves visual storytelling and partnering with creatives to make great work. That is what makes her love her job. When she's not working, you can find her in the kitchen trying a new recipe or stretching her sourdough. Sounds good. So hi to both of you. Welcome.
Hi there. It's good to be here.
We need to jump in quickly. So what are you both up to? What's happening right now? What do shoots look like? Please give us and whoever wants to jump in first, tell us about it.
Me first?
Yep.
Go. What is
so
happening?
funny because this is like we just had to talk for like 10 minutes before we started because I haven't seen Sandra's face since she moved to Chicago, but this is a great person. So I'm really glad that we're doing this together. And wonderful to meet you finally, Hugh. I'm a big fan of your work.
Thank you.
So it's been busy at 72 and Sunny, I think, and we're very fortunate that that's the case because I know some agencies have taken real hits based on the types of clients that they have. Luckily, we have a lot of packaged goods. We've got, beer, which is big right now. We've got Google and Pinterest, tech companies that are still doing quite well in this environment. And so, you know, I've done shoots. I can't get into real specifics about which clients that I've done things for because they're all under NDA. However, I will say it was really tough in the beginning to figure out how to move forward because, you know, we couldn't actually do any shooting and everyone was really, you know, we had to stay in place. So a lot of the first projects that we put out surrounding COVID were UGC, user generated content, or we did a great ad for, I guess I can say this, for the NFL. Our production team reached out to all the players and players submitted, you know, iPhone content, and those things were then edited into, which was really a beautiful campaign with the players' heartwarming thoughts about what was happening in the world. So I think the first—
How did you shoot it? How?
We didn't. The players were shooting themselves. So, you know, the first half of this, and I don't know if we can parse it into halves, but I think the first month or two, we weren't doing any production at all. Everything was user-generated content, which is why we were busier than ever as art producers. We're sourcing stock footage. We're sourcing reach outs. Our PAL legal team was very busy, you know, chasing down people on Instagram. So I feel like the first 2 months, that's kind of where we landed. Now we're in a world where we've partnered with a few director photographers to do stay-at-home, stay-in-place shoots. These shoots do not involve shooting talent. Talent can't go to locations and be shot. So we've kind of had to navigate around that. And what I found is we either have to shoot at the photographer's home or at a location that belongs to, let's say, a prop designer or a stylist. We ask for pictures of that stylist's husband and his hands, and see if they have any kids or dogs. You know, it's really it has to be a very small production, 2 to 3 people, and we are really leaning on artists, photographers, and their crew to provide the resources that we need to make a shoot come to life. So it's been really interesting to be on Zoom for shoots, which really can slow things down when you're waiting for a client to hop on the Zoom to check in on a shot, to give their approval. So things, I feel, are moving much slower, but they're not stalled. So I guess that's a good summary of what's happening.
What are they shooting exactly? So if the talent can't be there, they're just shooting themselves?
Product.
Still life.
Still life, product, tabletop, yep.
With hand models, or that's what they're looking for?
Hand models. Yeah, I wish I could get into specifics, but I did have a client that, you know, we did need talent, and, you know, the prop master's wife was also a stylist. We just put her in a jumper. She looked great. She looked
great
fantastic, you know? So I'm curious to hear what Sandra's doing.
No, it's so interesting to hear all that, because it's so, you know, it kind of validates and also just confirms what I'm hearing from a lot of other producers at other agencies. But at FCB, it's been sort of the same trajectory. I think that, you know, we've been working from home since March 13th. Which was a Friday the 13th. You know, in my head, it was like doomsday, because we left the office and then we just like never went back. But, you know, so yeah, that probably for the rest of March, we were all trying to figure out how to work from home. And then for April, we were trying to figure out what can we do to still make stuff. And UGC was really big. You know, we were really lucky to have some clients who, and you know, at the agency, we had some clients that were sort of busier than ever. They were really part of the conversation as the nation was trying to reckon with this new circumstance. We did work for Walmart. We have Kimberly-Clark, which sells toilet paper. So, you know, we had some work that we needed to get out really quickly. And so, you know, UGC, some animation. We have a motion post studio in-house that has motion graphics artists that could work on some things and turn them out pretty quickly, even when we relegated them to their homes, which was pretty amazing. And then in April and toward the end of April especially, we started to say, you know, we're not going to put anyone in harm's way if we send them, you know, we send them our product and they're going to find, you know, they'll do a tech scout in their home with, their partner that they've been quarantined with, who happens to also be a prop stylist. You know, we were able to sort of find those situations where we were, you know, asking artists to wear a lot of hats and open up their homes and their families to see how we could still continue to make stuff, which is interesting and crazy in its way, but found a way, you know, it was a way for us to be really nimble, right? I think that, you know, we were working on stuff for clients and brands who are probably used to a very different kind of production outside of the remote aspect of it, but also with a small team, scrappy, right? Like, you know, a quick kind of scrappy shoot. But they were able to, I think, open up the possibilities of what we could do, of like, you know, whatever they could do in their home or whoever they sort of had at their disposal. We shot, the shoots I've done and completed so far have been for beverage clients who were either shot in the photographer's home or the photographer's studio, which is like linked up to their home, like that they own or that they, you know, actually happen to live very near. And it was just, you know, hand models was the extent of talent that we would utilize in those shots. And other than that, other than us not physically being there and having the creative, like in, you know, in our artist's ear, like and the length of time that things take, because it's a smaller crew that you have on set, if you are lucky enough to be on set, or in one case when it was just a photographer and his partner that he was quarantined with, you know, they were all forced to wear a lot of hats, and it was a crew of exactly 2 people. So where we'd ordinarily get, you know, 6 to 8 shots in a day, we were lucky to walk away with 3. Everything just takes a longer time. That compounded with Zoom calls, figuring out client communications. You know, if we're all on set, it's much easier for us to be able to pull a producer aside or have creatives talk, you know, separately with a photographer, for, you know, the producer and account to manage the client. And all of that, you know, we're all now in the same Zoom room and looking at the same screen. So we've had to sort of figure out how those communication channels have changed as well, and how we can manage those so that everyone is able to say what they need to say and get what they need to get done out of the shoot. I say all that to say, all of that is new, but the actual product and the results that we're getting from these shoots have really impressed me. I mean, it's really as though the process has changed, the results are stunning. And I think that, you know, we're not seeing our clients have to compromise in the level of work they have to achieve, even though the protocol and the procedure of this has had to take some serious adjusting to keep everybody safe.
I assume because it's slowed down and you get less shots, the budget is different. Is that right?
The budgets are never different, Andrew.
No.
Let's just keep it real, shall we? I mean, if it's a $20,000 to $30,000 shoot, that's what they still have. And I think what's happened is a $30,000 day is typical, and you do that, but now we need you to do it in 2 days, and it's still $30,000. So
wow.
However that breaks out, I mean, we are hiring less crew, like Sandra said. I think it helps. Just one tip is that everyone should adjust their identities. If you are a photo assistant, you should be a photo assistant with prop styling leanings. and you can maybe do some, like, say your other things.
Yeah.
You know, because we need people who can wear many, many hats, like Sandra said. In this moment.
And the photographer as well. Same theory.
100%.
I was just gonna say, yeah, I was watching this shoot like my first COVID production, but I was watching the shoot unfold on Zoom, and the photographer called in from 2 computers. One was him just sharing his capture one, and then one was where we could kind of actually talk to him face to face and give him some feedback. And you know, he had to wear probably more hats than I'd be comfortable with making a photographer wear again. But he was his own digi. He was his own assistant. You know, he was the props assistant to his partner who was doing the prop styling. And so that lent to the slowdown of the days, but also he did a wonderful job. And he didn't have production support on the ground with him either. So, you know, he had to kind of be his own producer and keep time and all this stuff. And he did a wonderful job. The results were awesome. I felt awful for him the whole time because I was like, I just wish he could have some help, but you know, we weren't able to do that. And I think now that was, you know, at end of April, now we're coming up on the middle of June already somehow. And I think that things change by the week or by the day or even sometimes by the hour, in terms of the information we're having to constantly intake, adjust, see how we're having to be flexible. I was talking to another producer just the other day, and we were trying to problem solve something that seemed simple, but the more we talked about it, it was harder. And I was like, I think we're all like juniors in this moment. Like we are all having to kind of relearn how to do our jobs. Are you feeling the same way, Clarissa?
100%. Yes.
It was a very
I've
strange.
never spent more time with Getty since I was a junior. I've never purchased more stock.
Exactly. In so many ways. It's really adjusted like the level of knowledge that we have and our experience in some ways, you know, of how we expect traditional productions to look has in some cases kind of gone out the window because we all have to sort of figure this out together. And that also takes partnering really closely with photographers and us really leaning on them of like, okay, now in this new reality, if you're going to be wearing more hats, how many shots can you really do in a day? You know, we also know that they may not have, that we're all trying to figure it out together. So it's like, it might all be our first production where we're all trying to figure it out. And I think at the end of the day, like the name of the game is patience as much as we can possibly say. Like we're all doing a job, but we're all also, you know, in a very, very new and different world. And we bid things a certain way or we plan things a certain way, and we have to just be willing to pivot and be patient, because this is definitely not the way we all came up working in this industry. It's just, we just had to really relearn all of our essential skill sets, and that takes some patience.
Yeah, photographers as well.
Definitely.
Right, Hugh?
Yeah, can I ask a question? Have you guys had to like adjust the content? In other words, you know, you're talking about still life and working with hand models. Did that content change the direction after the pandemic, or did you have to shift from like, you know, an approved layout with models and then this happened and then you had to shift the content over to hand models and still life? Does that sound right?
Yeah. I think creatives are really being very thoughtful about it. I know all of our strategists as well are, when we go into thinking about how to execute something or the idea never has a room full of people in it. That doesn't make sense to do that now. So I think for even as far back as strategy, we're strategically thinking about how to communicate differently. Yeah. At this point. And I think that's just having like super smart strategists, super smart creatives who are coming up with really smart solutions. I actually have one funny story. We were in the middle of a Smirnoff campaign. It just came out like a month ago, and we had shot already on location and on set and did this huge party scene, and people are drinking and partying, and COVID happened. But luckily, within shooting that campaign, they had also shot these like 15-second shorts about not drinking and driving, where all of the talent was face-to-face on set and saying, no, don't do it, you know. And they did this amazing cut of that whole thing, which then became the Smirnoff campaign about staying home and drinking. And I felt like it was a really smart way. I mean, we had to re-edit and recut the entire, you know, commercial, but it was a smart solution on how to just like not lose all of that money that we
did you end up slapping a disclaimer on one of those edits saying that this was like footage that was shot prior to?
I believe so.
I saw that, and I was like, that's smart. No one's doing pool parties right now, so
no one's doing that. But there we were in the midst of all the COVID heavy, you know, kind of piano-led campaigns. There were people partying, and it was disruptive, and it was effective because of how smart they thought about it and how quickly they made that change. So
Yeah. On my end, I think it's a lot of the same. I think that, strategy has been so pivotal on every kind of production coming forward. And one of the big questions we've sort of asked as like a FCB production guideline for anything going forward in the time of COVID has been, is it necessary for us to be doing this right now? What I mean by that is, outside of like brands obviously always needing new content and having their campaigns that they've been planning for a while. And, this was a big year for a couple of brands, so they've always had to do stuff. But I think that there is more of an awareness of, people like I said, like I saw, I think that spot, and it had a disclaimer on it saying like, shot previously used footage or whatever the case is, because I think the public is really aware and sensitive to what essential work is. And if your brand is going to throw a bunch of people into a backyard without masks on, that would probably reflect really poorly on your brand. So we need to be really clear about what we're asking people in the industry to do, because I think that also audiences are very aware that if they see new work happening right now, what does it look like, and is everyone being safe? We did another producer that I worked with did a spot for Cox, and they, Cox Communications, and they were kind of pretty far down the road one way and did have to pivot their script because of everything that happened. And they had to put talent in masks and, sort of rework what that spot was going to look like, just based on knowing that the way that it was originally concepted just really wasn't going to be relevant or feasible for the brand messaging they were trying to put behind it. But in terms of in initial concepting, I think at this point, anything new is done through the lens of knowing like the context in which we're going to be operating as a production, and the context in which it will be received by an audience or a consumer.
How do you guys plan, like, because change happens so quickly right now, how do you plan next week, next month, which you guys need some time?
I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know.
I don't know how to do that in my personal life, much less in my work life.
You guys, tough. I mean, the whole production for this just jumps. I have so many questions. I don't want to get lost. One question from previous was, so you're getting less shots per day, right? But as you said, Clarissa, then it could go into 2 days, but that's our budget, same budget.
Yes.
Okay. And I just want also, before I jump into where we're going, I want to stick to remote shooting. And Sandra, you explained the two cameras, Capture One.
Yeah.
What else? Can we get more details on how the remote shooting is happening?
Yeah, I'll go first. For the ones I've done so far, they've all been a little different based on the needs and based on client comfort and trust with the agency. So on the first one, we had a Zoom call. Photographer had kind of two cameras, one where he could talk to us and one that was just his digi station, basically his separate laptop that was his digi station. I will preface by saying that different setups will work for different people and different shoots and different needs. But overall, I think one thing that's really helpful is doing everything possible and that makes sense to sort of preserve the on-set shooting experience. And what I mean by that is partially from the agency end. Like, no one wants to sit on a Zoom call all day. I get it. It takes up a lot of like memory on your computer. It's boring for most of the time because everything's going even slower than it would go on set. We don't have crafty, whatever. But at the same time, it helps to sort of keep everyone in the mindset of like a shoot is happening and we're all here together. And when people start to think that they can keep a Zoom in the background but do other things, it just slows things down even more. So we made sure that we were really clear, at least to our internal team and where it made sense for our client teams, that if they weren't going to be available and on the Zoom, or there have been other programs too, but Zoom is kind of the catch-all. If they weren't going to be on the Zoom the whole time, that we could text them updates. Like I was getting screen grabs from another photographer and texting JPEGs before moving on to the next shot or next scene, but that we needed a reply within 15 minutes. because we couldn't let it hold everything up. And if we didn't hear from them, we couldn't guarantee we'd incorporate their changes, and we kind of had to move on. So that from an overall standpoint, I think in terms of the speed of communication is super critical to keep, because it's the biggest thing that's changed in terms of how this stuff is run. But the dual camera thing works pretty well for some people and on some shoots. Again, it was nice to have that kind of face-to-face interaction when we were giving feedback. I've also been on other shoots where it's just been the screen that they're sharing is just their capture one, but then via voice, they wouldn't have a separate kind of call into the Zoom, but then they would just voice over any of the feedback, and we could communicate it that way. And then, we'd start like a group text with me, the creatives and the photographer, and me, the creatives and the production coordinator, to make sure that information was all being shared. And then however the clients want to communicate with account. I mean, it was literally like, I needed 2 screens and several windows. Wow. It was kind of insane. And it takes practice, right? Like I would love, every time we do it, I think people are starting to see where the pain points are, or what is working and what isn't working. And so we are just trying to be in all things flexible and adjust as we start to learn more. But so far, no matter what the process is, again, I think that keeping in mind that we're trying to preserve that on-set experience of looking at a monitor together and giving feedback promptly is the most important thing in terms of the remote shooting that I've been doing.
Sounds like it really slows it down.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. Like we have to incorporate that into our own estimates, into our own production.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Clarissa?
think every photographer should have like a live stream service that they're offering. I think that live streaming is essential, right, at this moment. And yes, I second everything Sandra said. I did a beverage shoot in that same way, and there were only 3 people on that set, and they just had to wear a lot of hats. We had a food stylist, the assistant, and the photographer was his own digital tech. So yeah, I second everything that you said. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I will say just one other thing though, Andrea, like you're saying, yes, that means that it'll take more time on set. I also think the other side to that coin is it takes more time to prep, because we know that the team is limited on set, and the ability, not the ability to be flexible and be nimble, but the time it takes to be flexible and be nimble is just so much longer on set if we're making those decisions on set. So like, as much as possible, we've been the company line we've sort of been saying is like it takes 1.5 to 2 times as long to prep for a shoot now than it did in the past, because of the extent of approval and the amount of things we want figured out. Like you got to have a pre-light, you have to get test shots if you can. Like luckily, at that photographer's home, he was able to, in his tech scout, give us some test shots. So then we had the client sign off on that, and they were much more willing then to be like, yeah, just text me a JPEG, but like I saw the shot already, it's just going to be with the actual product and you got it. That kind of prep stuff will help keep the shoot day from slowing down too much outside of the communication things. But in terms of like the limited team on the ground, I've found that really, really allotting for in your bids, in your planning, like put more time into prep up front, because you can't go out and get new glassware the way that maybe you would have been able to, or go to the prop storage or whatever. Like it's just not feasible or realistic on what we're having to do remotely.
But how does that not affect the budget?
Yeah, that was my question.
But Clarissa, what did you just say?
I was just going to say, we've been doing a pre-pro and then the pre-pro.
Wow.
So we've been having 2 pre-pro meetings basically.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister.
So how does budget not change when it's taking so much more time? I mean, we have to pay the assistant. We have to pay.
Yeah, I've sort of found there's been sort of two ways to look at it. From my end, the clients are seeing, we can only have like 10 people or fewer on set. So our crews are smaller. So, it should be cheaper, right? However, to sort of offset that, we're looking at more time, and we're also looking at safety stuff, right? PPE, right. Ensuring people have sanitation breaks, hiring a medic, hiring a safety advisor. If you're going to do all those things on an actual set. I think, and you know, and in addition to a longer prep time, which I think I probably already said, but all that to say, what we've tried to communicate, you know, client budgets are client budgets, but I never try to let them know that, you know, they're not going to be saving anything. All of it is just being reallocated to the different, you know, the different things we have to consider in the way that we produce things now. And depending on the shoot, and all I've done so far have been relatively simple, you know, tabletop still life product shoots. But as that begins to expand into where we may be going soon, I can see that conversation potentially changing to, you know, how can we be more realistic about this budget now that we know more, we have more experience, we know that we can't get away with this many weeks of prep, we really have to put in this much more, and it is more hours and it is more time. And you know, for shoots going forward, I think there can be a case made for that conversation. I think that in the upfront of, like, I'll call them reactive shoots of, like, we already planned on it and we were going to do it now, and that we already have this money set aside. It was really difficult to explain or even know or understand the way that that was going to affect budget. But I can also see that that might change in the next 3 to 6 months as new, larger productions may start coming across our tables, our desks. I don't have a desk anymore. I have a table. Sorry.
So clients might pay more in the future, depending on the type of shoot.
I think that we can explain to them why things may cost more, and they may be more able to understand why that is the case, in the context of what's going on.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like, are you doing a lot of hand holding with the client right now, trying to explain things? And
holding my own hand, Hugh. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. It is. It's definitely a lot. Like I said, we're relearning our job, but also having to lead with confidence our clients and our internal teams through making sure they know that things can still be made at this time. It's an interesting balance. I'm sure Clarissa, you probably experienced the same.
Yeah, I think tomorrow, apparently, we are allowed to shoot again, according to Mayor Garcetti here in LA. So I don't know what that looks like. And I'm certain that we're still, as an agency, going to take every precaution to keep these shoots very small. And I know we're already talking about having a medic on set, sanitizing overnight. All of those people have to get paid, and they will be on the estimate. So yeah, I wasn't saying they're just still expecting the same for the same money. But again, like to Sandra's point, we're talking about budgets that got approved in February that can't expand. And so I think going into planning, strategizing for what comes next, all of these things will be taken into consideration.
Right. I don't want to get lost in my own head, but I have to ask you about the remote shooting. Are you doing, like, can they mark the clients and you guys, can you mark up the images to show the photographer? Is that important?
I think that I did have this similar, I was doing a project for a client, and it was a CGI project, and it had to happen quickly. And we used this app called Frankie, which has its pluses and its minuses. I don't love it, but if you need to real time comment and mark up, it's pretty snazzy. But it can't replace looking at a large image in Photoshop and seeing all the details. Frankie is not going to get you that. I think that a lot of people doing like animation and sort of logo creation use it, and it's a cool tool. But
so not for product photography, you don't need to, or cars, or
I haven't found the need to do any markups. I actually think that communicating on a one Zoom meeting like this is very effective, especially if you also have access to looking at what's happening on set simultaneously. It's just like, hey, move the can a little to the left.
Right.
Come back, get some ice. It's not as granular as that.
Yeah. I think that I echo and feel the same way. I think that, again, in trying to preserve that on-set experience as closely as possible, that markup wouldn't be needed if we were there in person either. I think that we could always just talk about it and point to it. And, you know, we've not felt like we've had to get that granular in our feedback in terms of like move it, you know, a millimeter to the left at this point. And, you know, I can see how it would be probably a bigger tool needed in post for retouching or for editing. And that's been really key. If not for markup, then at least for being able to point to things live, which I know some software allows you to do. But for the actual shoot, I've not felt the need for that to come through.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I want to get into, so now we've learned so much about what's happening. What do you need from photographers? Like, how do you choose the photographer? Do they have to be, what's so important right now? And what's going to change from what you need from a photographer now? Clarissa, you're on mute.
Yeah, because the garbage man is here.
Oh.
I think that I need to know that they're going to be flexible. I feel like also knowing, I gotta be honest, the last shoot that I did, the photographer lived with the prop. They had a roommate that was a prop stylist. They were quarantined together. That just made sense. That just made really good sense to go with that person. It wasn't that his book was so much better. It was just, he offered a solution to our quarantine problem. And so I think my best advice is to, you know, market yourself as a solution provider. And I know that that's what you already do. But I feel like the AICP guidelines are just like a moving target. And, you know, at first it was, no, you're on your own, one person, only who you're quarantined with. Now it's up to 6 people. Tomorrow, I don't know what it's going to be tomorrow. I have no idea. I'm going to check the website just like we all are to find out what's okay. But I feel like I want to hire a person who, if in 2 weeks it shifts and changes, they can shift and change with it, if that makes sense. Just big picture.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd agree with that. I also think that there is something in searching for those solutions and being able to provide them to us as we sort of seek out artists. I think that like testing and figuring all that out on your own, right? Like not waiting for a job to teach you how you can kind of be creative in doing things remotely. You know, the test shoots and trying to seeing what some people have been able to kind of achieve in a remote way, you know, without necessarily having the client work to give them that opportunity. I think that having to be curious to figure out what solution you can offer somebody when they're looking at partners for a job. Because all of this is new to everybody, I can't always lean on somebody who's done this exact thing that I'm looking for, because we're all trying to figure it out. But the more that you, you know, seek opportunities of like just really like making cool stuff for yourself that is within the confines of what we have to do, I think is really cool. Seeing what people come up with, I think, is incredible. I think I saw Catherine O'Hara had some photos taken for, it was like Vogue, or I forget what it was, but Art Streiber used a drone, and like she didn't have to leave her home. They styled her and sent her a bunch of stuff, and they used a drone, and she was shot in her backyard. And I wouldn't have thought that was a thing that we could probably have people do, but apparently it's an option. And so I think staying really curious and creative, as we all are, to try and figure out and be able to put forth those solutions, whether they're highly practical and logical, like, oh, you made a good choice and you live with a prop stylist, or if it's just trying out those new things of, you know, of stretching the realm of what's possible. Because I think we all have in our head how we're supposed to solve this quarantine problem, this COVID problem. But I think there are probably more ways out there than we're considering. And we are looking for those opportunities and solutions, and we are looking for photographers who are also capable to be flexible and open to new ways of doing things as a way to solve that problem as well.
Have you guys been receiving capabilities and resources decks from photographers? And are you more likely to choose people that have case studies in those decks, proven ground, in other words?
I speak for myself. I know that I've received a lot of them, and I think that they're really, really helpful. I think some of the case studies or the sort of proof points of saying like, here, we promise we can do this, I think are important. And I think that we definitely take them into consideration, again, because we may be thinking that something isn't possible. And so seeing a photographer market their ability to solve that problem to us with a proof point, I think, at least in my regard, and creatives I've talked to have found it to be really valuable.
Yeah, I have a COVID bookmark tab now. And every time I get one of those, I'm archiving it, and I definitely am looking at those resources every time a project comes up. I think it's really important.
How that, I was just going to ask you, how do you find photographers now? Like, has it changed a little bit? As far as marketing for us, should we do it differently? I mean, we can't meet you person to person anymore.
Yeah, no.
We can't email you we can't send you a promo at the office.
That's true. Has it changed? I mean, honestly, I still look the same way that I used to look. I'm looking at rep sites. I'm always concerned about the creative as well. I'm never like, oh, creative doesn't matter. It's only about if they can work at home in place. No, you need to be an amazing photographer and have a wonderful portfolio that's applicable to the job that I'm sourcing for. Like, that's a no-brainer. I think the COVID resources help us to determine and help and walk these things through to the clients. Like, we have to handhold them. So if I'm sending a deck that says, this is an amazing photographer, but also look at the case studies, look at the solutions that they can provide us. This is a safe option for you. So it just helps us to communicate to the clients and our legal teams internally. They love them too. So yeah, I mean, it's helpful.
I agree.
Wow. What resources do you look? Where do you find photographers? What websites? How do you search?
For me, I've been using, the email promos that we get. I file and I search through, not reading them all, reading many of them and taking the time to open them up at the end of the week. I try to give myself some time, but I keep them all in a folder. And then if there is a need where, something from previous experience, or, I'm not able to immediately think of a list of 30 people I can give to my creatives, I'll actually go into that folder. This is probably a system that I alone use, but I'll go into that folder and then I'll actually search keywords, right? So if it's like, if it's supposed to be tabletop, if it's supposed to be food and beverage, or if it's like, someone worked on Smirnoff that I just can't remember who that photographer was, I can search Smirnoff in that promo folder and remember kind of where I saw it. But I use that as sort of a hub of searchability as I'm trying to find new photographers.
So email promos.
I know people hate them, but and I definitely don't hate them. I use them, but I found a way to use them to make them useful for me. I think that some things work for some people and some things don't. But I'll use sort of that folder system, and then as well as going to rep sites, as well as going to, sometimes on occasion I will use Instagram and kind of see what people are doing, especially if it's a really social content, creative heavy kind of production that we're looking at. I know everyone has kind of different methods, but and to answer your previous question, that hasn't changed too much for me in new COVID time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead, please.
I think that just as a top level, most art producers really love photography. I haven't met too many who don't love it. And so in our downtime, and I've had downtime in my life, we typically are like looking at sites. We're looking at rep sites just for enjoyment. We're looking at, editorial spreads. We're looking at what people are putting out on blogs. And there's a lot of different ways we're ingesting visual content. And at those times when you have downtime, that's when you're bookmarking and filing the things that you love, so that when a job comes along, you don't have to be just so reactionary and panic.
Yeah.
You kind of already know, wow, visually, this would be amazing for this thing. Do you know what I mean? And so if you have a steady diet of consuming art, you kind of have some solutions when a project comes along, if that makes sense.
Do you have any specific websites you like that we could pay for certain ones? Do you use any of those?
Oh, we talking like Workbook and EdEdge? Sometimes I think it depends. I think it depends. I really only use Workbook and EdEdge for shoots that I'm not as familiar with. Like sometimes I'll use them for food, or things where you just need an amazing stylist, you need a local, or I'll use it if I'm shooting in a specific city that I'm not familiar with. Do you know what I mean? So like if I don't know anyone in Minneapolis, I will use the annuals. But for the most part, it's a creative decision and it's in my heart.
Everyone on this call is like, how do I get it?
They're all in my heart. You have to get in my
I wanted to see if you wanted to answer some questions from our audience. If anybody.
Wait, Hugh, can I interrupt you?
Yeah, of course.
Sandra, any websites that you use?
If I use any, they're in the same way that Clarissa said. I think it's if I have to find some specialty with a photographer, like if I had to find an architecture photographer in a certain place, those sites.
Any specific sites that you do use?
Workbook, mainly Workbook, if I'm going to go that route.
Ooh, we are selling Workbook. Do you guys talk to each other? Do you ask other art producers?
Yes, that's what I was going to say all the time. Yes.
I loved RPA because we all sat together and like this, it literally got to the point where we wouldn't even get up from our desks. We're just like banging away. Sandra!
This is the best.
Wait, one more question here before you ask.
Sure.
On emails, if we do a different, how important is the subject? Can that determine if you open the email or not? Do we have to, what's a great subject?
I'm not that petty, no.
I'll say this, if it were something that I wanted to think about, I wouldn't be able to, because my agency will stick an external thing at the beginning of all of the emails that don't come from our agency. So if any cool, clever subject line probably gets like drowned out by this huge external that I have to look at. So, and I don't get too picky about that. I mean, that matters a little less to me. I think that keywording because of my system, keywording what's in your actual email, making sure you have alt text in there so people can search it, I think is super key, because I search my email constantly, just for like work stuff. I think that's really key. But in terms of subject line and what gets opened, I'm going to open it no matter what, because I want to sort of see and keep current. So that personally to me doesn't really matter.
And maybe location. At this point, I feel like that's really important. Location.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For my lonely system, probably no one else uses this, but maybe if anyone else wants to, they can.
That's a great idea.
That's been useful for me.
Yeah. Hugh, what was the question? Sorry to
interrupt. There was one I found very interesting. Are clients looking for a written statement on our websites that describe a shoot scenario in detail, some sort of policy? Do you think that's advantageous or is it not necessary?
I think on some larger jobs, or most of my larger jobs, we require a treatment. So that is your moment to express yourself about how you did. Is that what you meant?
Well, it's kind of, but it sounds to me like it should be like a statement on your website that's permanently there to talk about your scenario and what you have available. So, I mean, I put my capabilities catalog deck on my website, but I think this is something a bit different.
I think that's amazing. I've seen some photographers add like a work in place tab to their site, and which talks about, what they're able to offer. And I think that's helpful.
I think also one thing too is in terms of like a statement that's going to be bannered across a website. I think that's great in order to pull attention to maybe the separate page you have that outlines your capabilities. I worry about that being like this permanent statement that's always there, because as we touched on, you know, if it's always going to be there, I might not read when it changes. And I also think that things are changing so quickly that that process or procedure probably is less permanent than we think.
Yeah.
I have to jump back to email promos. How often should we be emailing you? How much is too much? Is once a month too much?
No, once a month is fine. Honestly, if I don't feel stalked, I'm fine. Like, some people stalk. Let's keep it real.
What does that mean?
Honestly, the unfortunate thing, an email a day. And Clarissa, I didn't hear back from you, but I'm just putting this at the top of your inbox. It's like, okay, even if you're talented at that point, you've lost me. Do you know what I mean? And just, you know, an email every couple weeks, once a month. If I'm on your newsletter and I'm just on it and you know, that's totally fine. But I feel like there have been instances where I have had to pick up the phone and call, and it wasn't for a job. It was, this is aggressive. You have to stop, you know? So I'm just keeping it real. That's never a good idea.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah. Okay, I can jump. Okay, we have 8 minutes left. Oh God.
Time.
Okay. Social media, how important is that for our marketing?
I think it's important. I personally use it. You know, it's cool to see. One, I think it's just another opportunity to brand and market yourself if you have a page where you're able to show your work. I also think that social is, I mean, so much content ends up on social. So also for me, being able to see how you know, a certain look or aesthetic kind of lives on social by going to a page or seeing, you know, what an artist has done, I think has been helpful to send creatives to as well.
So their website?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you want it to be different than the website?
Gives you so much flexibility. You can do stills, movement, GIFs. You can get creative on social. I don't necessarily on your social media account just want to see the same stills from your portfolio. I want to see you like have some fun. Do you know what I mean? And you might go viral. That doesn't suck. So like, you know, it's a great opportunity to open yourself up to other types of ways to get work as well.
Yeah.
What's the difference with Insta stories and our Insta posts? Any marketing differences for you?
None come to mind. I view both. But I think that from a searchability standpoint, I tend to go to feeds more. You know, I through like some work accounts, I do try to make sure I follow photographers so I can also see their stories. But the Instagram feed that you can have on your profile can serve as just another way to augment your portfolio that's always sort of standing there as a collection. And like Clarissa said, you can get a little bit more creative with it than you would on a website. So that, to me, I think that I would probably curate the feed versus make sure you're on stories and rapid firing stuff out every day.
Well, it's kind of like social is a way of keeping yourself top of mind without stalking, right? In a sense.
Yeah. Clarissa's like,
I see what you did there, Hugh. I see what you did there.
Very smart. Yeah. I'm going to rapidly ask you a question about estimates. Can you tell us kind of what a day rate versus a shot rate? What are you used to for that? And then I was going to ask you how much. Can you give us like a range? What's the normal range of day rates?
That's a tough question. I think it really depends on the project, on what we're capturing, on how, you know, if it's a lifestyle shooter versus product. There's so many variations to that. I don't think that's something that I could like generalize.
And usage
it just depends. Like Hugh, you know, I can't ask you to do something for $2,500 a day. You're a legend. Like, I'm not gonna do that to you. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know, so it just really depends on, are you just starting in the business? Have you been doing this for a while? Do you have fine artwork? Like, there's so many variables.
Yep. Yeah, agree. I think usage too. I'm seeing less things on a per shot basis fee wise in terms of like fee structure, I do expect to see things by day. But yeah, naming that range is, it can be an enormous range. It's hard to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, and you don't have to answer me, do you still pay 10 grand a day?
It depends on who's shooting.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, what's the highest you've ever seen?
No.
Okay.
I
needed to get a no.
They will come for me. No, I can't.
Right. Right.
I'd be embarrassed to give you that number.
I kind of want to give it myself. I think my highest has been like 25 a day, 25 grand.
Yeah, mine's on a
I'll answer it.
basis. Mine's on a purely project basis. It's not day rate, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
It all depends.
It all
Right.
depends.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any red flags about an estimate that we should know about? Too low would be one, I think, and not having the right, line items.
For me, for me, I was just going to say, like, we, as producers, we try to make sure that we give, like, we have bid spec sheets or RFQs or whatever the case is. And like, if an estimate has blatantly missed several things on that bid spec sheet, it's a little bit of a red flag. But, usually we just try to make sure that if we do, if a producer is providing that information, check it twice just to make sure that it's understood and everything that's in there is included in the estimate. That's all I'd say.
I know we have 3 minutes, right? We got to stick to this.
Yep. Sorry.
Clarissa, Sandra, we got to stick to the 3 minutes. 2 minutes.
2 minutes now. Yeah. I got
so many emails.
I know. I got a call right after.
They're coming in as we're talking.
You can hear the pings. I hope not.
Yes.
Two quick questions.
I'm sorry.
Good.
That's why I keep muting, because it's literally.
2 quick questions. Do you have any tidbit of information that would be helpful to photographers that they don't realize? Is there something like grabs you and be like, damn, they should all do that, or that was impressive? Anything in general?
It's hard for me. I'll just say that, like, the creative call and your opportunity to connect with your creatives, we when you get to a creative call, we've seen your work and we like it and think that you can do the job. That creative call is the job interview portion where you try to make sure there's a chemistry mesh, and also we want to see what more you can bring to it. And I think that takes a lot of practice. Creative calls, I've had very, very good ones and I've had pretty rough ones, and it's a skill that I think takes some honing and just comes with experience. But know going into it that when you come to a creative call, your portfolio has gotten you to that point. And so we want to see what more about you or about your work you can bring to that specific project. I think that's important.
No.
Clarissa, anything?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. The creative call is the deciding, it's the moment. I don't know. I think just as a person who loves photography, I think if you can evoke emotion from this person, you have succeeded in whatever way. So that's what I'm always looking for when I'm choosing a person to do a job is, can you bring more to the table than just shooting an image?
Yeah, I take it as if I get the creative call, I've won already. That's
For
huge.
sure. Yes.
Yeah, it's huge. So, okay, it looks like it's 1
1
o'clock, lady.
Yeah.
Oh God. All right. Should I ask you one more, or you want to go?
I have to go.
I have to go.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Sorry.
This has been so much
Stay
fun.
forever.
Yes, thank you so much. And Clarissa, I'll call you later because, girl, we got to catch up.
I know, it's so good to see your face.
Thank you. And
you.
Hugh, stay on here for a second.
Okay.
Thank you
ladies,
guys.
Thank you both.
so much.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be in
Bye.
touch.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay.
No,
So Hugh, what did you get out of that? What did you learn? Because I learned a lot.
Well, I think it's just, steady as she goes. Just be mindful and respectful when you're talking about approaching them. Keep tabs on what's going on, and adjust your treatments to accommodate the certain circumstances. but don't be afraid to, ask for a little more money if it's going to take longer for you to do your job. They're hiring you for your professionalism. And if that means, from your professional perspective, you need to increase your rates, you need to increase your rates. So that's what I got out of it.
Yeah.
How about you?
I learned a lot. I wish I could remember the exact ones I learned. Well, about the creative call at the end was really interesting.
Yeah.
And how that really can get you the job.
Absolutely.
That creative call.
Yeah.
And the treatment I wanted to ask, but do you do treatments, Hugh?
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You must put a lot into it.
A lot into it, and they're fun to do. I love talking about the details, but now even the presentation itself is so glorious. It's
yeah.
the presentation is up there. So I've had a lot of help with that.
I found how they look for photographers, how they handle their emails, remote shooting. That was really interesting. Yeah. It kind of set the whole tone for it. And I thought it was really important to mark up. We allow them to mark up images. Not so important.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from you? Any last minute? We didn't get into a lot of topics that we wanted to, but
I think what we got to is really, really important. So I think that's where we should end it. And I just want to say thank you so much for including me on these. And thank you to Clarissa and Sandra in spirit for joining us today. We're all about advocating for our industry and building a community of support and friendship. And having you a part of that means a lot. We also
so you should join
the
APA.
And the benefits are amazing. One of our sponsors is Sammy's Camera, and we want to say thank you to them. They've been a huge supporter of APA LA. So I will.
And next in 2 weeks, we have two awesome guests. Emily Hoskins, she's an art producer or senior producer, I should say, at Designery, and we also have a creative director, Jason Pierce at Crispin Porter Boguski, and we're going to talk more about the branding and where we're going, where we're shifting to. So that's in 2 weeks.
Okay. Wait. Okay. Until then, adieu.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.